Hi guys, two focus groups were set up to discover if those who had backed the Tories in 2019 were still willing to vote Conservative this time round, but if not, what was putting them off? In both groups there was some pretty terrible news for Rishi Sunak, and while this is a tiny sample size, what they said will no doubt raise alarm bells even amongst Tories with strong majorities. Both Nigel Farage's Reform UK and Keir Starmer's Labour Party will be interested in what they had to say. Have a listen.
You all voted Conservative in 2019. Who's planning on voting Conservative on July the 4th? All of you voted Conservative in 2019, in that general election. Who is planning to vote Conservative on July 4th?
We asked these former Tory voters to write down in a few words how they now view the Conservative Party they voted for last time round.
Self-centred.
No trust. For the upper class.
So what's the moment for you that you went off the Conservatives?
For me, it was COVID with the PPE contracts and things like that. We were in a time of absolute desperation and they just handed money out to the mates.
I think during COVID, I think it was a constant rule breaking. They're just breaking the rules constantly for themselves, having parties, drinking beers and that kind of thing.
It's completely correct, and this is borne out by the polling. Sir John Curtis has pointed out on a number of occasions how the Tories lost about 6% in support directly as a result of Partygate. Like, on the one hand, you had Boris Johnson telling the public, you need to follow the rules, you need to save lives, you need to protect the public. You need to make massive sacrifices. You need to wear a mask, you need to maintain social distancing, and you can't spend time with friends and family even if they're at the end of their lives. And then what happened? Well, he was doing something completely different himself, along with his aides, along with members of the Conservative Party. Having fun, having a shindig, not respecting the rules. And then he lied about it. Pretended that he didn't know that there were parties taking place. Then, yes, there were parties, but he didn't attend. Then, yes, I did attend, but I didn't know it was a party. And then lie after lie after lie. And then it eventually came back to bite him on the behind. And then, of course, there was the corruption regarding PPE contracts. People saw massive amounts of government money, taxpayer money, going up in smoke now because of that corruption. Members of the party, friends of the party, donors given massive contracts when it was just pure and utter corruption.
Liz Truss coming in.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm Rishi. Yeah, I thought that she was an absolute disgrace.
I think it...
Yes. This is another point that Sir John Curtis brought up. Another drop of 6 percentage points was Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng's mini budget, driven up mortgage, which resulted in driving up mortgages, which of course impacted not just people with mortgages, but people who rent. You know, if a landlord is paying more for their mortgage, they're going to pass that cost on to the tenant. So this, of course, is not going down well, not just with working class people, with middle class people as well.
Was just the fact that they've completely lost control of the economy.
The Tories, having studied their own focus groups, hoped they'd devised a campaign to pull back voters like these. Our focus groups suggest the last few weeks have had the opposite effect.
D-Day, like one of the biggest mistakes I've ever seen a politician do.
How did that make you feel?
To be honest, I was fuming. That's his own fault, not the itinerary. Him as a person, that's his fault.
How did it make you feel?
It's just disrespectful.
Yeah.
He's the representative of
the country.
Of the country.
I think Rishi Sunak was damaged more by the D-Day fiasco than the Conservative Party itself. But of course, as he's the head of the Conservative Party and he's the face of the party, he damages the party indirectly.
Asked for a phrase that conveys their current view of Rishi Sunak, both groups of ex-Tory voters are negative and unimpressed by the Prime Minister's attempts to connect.
When he raised the thing about Sky TV, he didn't have Sky TV when he was a child. Did any of us? Probably not. Growing up as a child, he didn't have Sky. I'm sorry, but what a foolish thing to say.
And that's probably where my false comes in. It's like he's saying what he thinks. That
infuriated me.
Yeah, like he's then siding with the general public, but then you just see straight through it.
Yeah.
This lady pointed out perfectly. See, the problem with Rishi Sunak is he's so disconnected from the lives of ordinary people that he needs to be trained by aides on how ordinary people talk, how ordinary people live, what ordinary people do. And he tries to emulate that, but he falls flat on his face on every occasion because he's so he's not somebody who wants to spend time with ordinary people. He wants to spend time with people like himself. But to be Prime Minister, you actually have to come down to ordinary people's level from time to time. And of course, he's not capable of doing that. Boris Johnson, even though he's a liar and a charlatan, is very good at doing that. Or at least very good at convincing people that he's like an ordinary person, a bit of a buffoon. It's all for show, of course, but he was very good at pulling it off.
It's normal.
Yeah, that's where the falseness comes in.
Mm.
So where are our panel of voters from Leeds South West and Morley drifting to now they've all abandoned the Tories and Rishi Sunak?
I genuinely feel that Britain is broken.
The party leader who decided to rejoin British politics 3 weeks ago has caught the eye of some.
Who's planning to vote Reform UK on July the 4th?
I think that he's got some reasonable ideas that he's put into the mix at the last minute.
You've just rejected the Conservatives, probably based on the lies that they told you in 2019. And what are you going to do now? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to vote for a different charlatan. So I voted for one charlatan in 2019 to get Brexit done, and that didn't work out very well. But don't worry, I'm going to vote for a different charlatan, but this time he's going to be honest, he's going to get things done.
He is misunderstood because I think everybody's like, you're racist, you're racist, you're racist. But when you listen to him, he says the same thing as I was saying.
Though Nigel Farage picks up some votes here, the vast bulk is heading Labour's way.
Who's considering voting Labour on July 4th?
Wow, there you go. But remember, these are people who voted for the Conservatives in 2019. Now they're flipping to Labour. These are typical voters. These are not political junkies. They're not people who follow politics. And this is not a criticism of them. They're ordinary people. They don't care so much about policies. They care about, okay, is the government of the day helping me? Yes or no? No, they're not. Kick them out.
What comes into your mind when you hear those words? Keir Starmer.
Uninspiring.
Rambles.
Irritating.
I put wishy-washy. That's not necessarily a criticism. I think perhaps that's what we need.
I like this. He's wishy-washy. It's not a criticism, but this is what's needed at the moment. To move away from the clown-like behaviour of Boris Johnson, from the cosplaying of Margaret Thatcher by Liz Truss, and from the forced, how can I say, ordinary man thinking of Rishi Sunak. Just somebody who's boring. A boring politician. Back to boring politicians, it seems. This is what this guy wants.
We don't need a big personality. We don't need a Donald Trump in charge of our country, and he might be the right guy.
We asked our focus groups to imagine what the headlines might be 1 year into a Keir Starmer premiership.
I've got Britain's karma under Starmer.
I am still uncovering the mess.
Rayner steps in, cops Starmer.
Keir blames NHS collapse on Sunak.
Who here's kind of thinking about voting for the Conservatives?
5 years ago, we focus grouped ex-Labour voters who'd backed Leave, and they all had switched to Boris Johnson. How deep are the allegiances of these ex-Tories, many moving towards Labour?
Put your hands up if you're voting Labour because it's a positive vote for Labour. Put your hands up if you're voting Labour because it's a vote against the Conservatives.
I totally agree with when you put no real policies, and I think I'm edging to that. They've not won me. The Tories have just lost me.
Historically, I was a Labour voter, and I was swayed by Cameron and swayed by Boris, and I voted for those two. But what we're getting right now is just dreadful. So there's absolutely no chance at the minute that I would vote Tory again.
Yeah, I agree. I can't say I would never ever vote Conservative again, because at the end of the day, if Labour make a mess and then Conservative come, like you say, become a united party and come up with some good policies, then in time I may vote for them again. I think it will be quite a while.
I won't rule out voting for any party.
One polling expert has suggested we may be in an era when voters' looser party ties are creating huge but short-lived voter coalitions, resembling sandcastles. Keir Starmer's potential coalition of supporters in our focus group look committed for next Thursday, but maybe not far beyond.
And this is a big problem for Labour going forward. So people will vote for them to get the Tories out, but then they want something done. And this, I think, is going to be a big problem for Labour, because if they want to retain these support of these people, they need to fix the economy. They need to grow the economy. They need to bring back freedom of movement. They need to talk about rejoining the European Union. They need to put in policies that will improve people's lives. Because if they don't, as the lady towards the end pointed out, look, if the Conservatives come back with some good policies, I'll vote for them, or I'll consider voting for them. This is the problem. These are voters who are not aligned to your party. They're aligned to getting rid of the incumbent if they're not happy with the incumbent and giving you a chance. This is where I think most of the support would go to Labour. People who are not enthusiastic about Keir Starmer, and Keir Starmer knows that. He doesn't have to convince these people through charm. He just needs to say, I'm not the Conservatives. But while that will work next week, it may not be enough going forward. He will actually have to implement policies to improve the situation. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.